Now let's take a look at some of the other brushes that we can use as we sculpt our little creature. So this is 07 begin, or you can just kind of start with the state of the object that you have up to this point. And so we're going to take a look at the clay and clay strips brush. So to do this, we want to have a few more subdivision levels. And so we want to step up to maybe level 5 or 6. And we'll come over here and you can see there's a clay and clay strips. So what these will do is give us a little bit more of a feeling of adding material to the object versus kind of just pulling the surface up. And so if I just use clay, you can see we've got the same sort of options here. Take my brush size down a little bit and come in here. I do want to make sure that our symmetry is still on. Yep. And so we can start to add. Now you can see that it's really faceted here, so I'm going to subdivide this one more time. I'm going to smooth this out. And we can start, and it's sort of like adding material to the object, and we can kind of smooth it back out, so a little bit more like a lumpy kind of feeling to it. We can come in here and add sort of detail coming up to this snout. You can sort of start to build in that little snout area. I'll come in here, and looking at the pictures, it's almost like a nose, like a human nose shape. I'm going to use Control to kind of push in areas right around there. And you can see how it's really sort of rough looking. What I'm going to do is go to Object Mode, and I want to be able to make this a little bit smoother. And so I'm going to go to Shading under Tools and set the shading to Smooth. Let's go back to Sculpt Mode. There, that looks a little bit better. So we can come back in and let me increase the strength there. Kind of come in and add a little bit of that shape coming up around the nose. Let's sort of push in the area where the eyes would set. Kind of add that detail coming around those eyes and kind of smooth it back in a little bit. If we use clay strips, it's going to give you an even more of kind of a strip, laying down strips of clay on top, give you kind of a more artistic sort of feeling, where you can kind of see the edges of that. And so we can come in here and start to block this in. If I want to, if I'm getting too much division there, I can go into the stroke. I'm just going to take the spacing down a little bit. And that'll give you a little bit of a kind of a smoother look. And then we can start to kind of break this up. So I want this to kind of come down maybe into the neck area. Again, just kind of smoothing this out, adding these strips coming down to the nose, making sure to come around the eye. You can also start to sort of add some bulk in areas, and you start to get an indication of sort of where the creases are going to go as you do this. Let me take the strength down a little bit. And this is often good for kind of blocking in overall shapes. Okay, kind of add a little bit more irregular kind of a shape coming in here. We also want to come in, and we'll do that in a second, I think, but we want to add a division here for the leg, but we want to have sort of a kind of a knee shape coming up in here. So you can kind of see the difference. It's kind of this lumpy sort of an effect, which in a lot of cases will actually help, especially if you're doing something organic. Having that little bit of irregularity in there is going to help you out a bit. Okay. Now you can see the snout on this guy's not coming out too far, so we can always jump back to grab, just using the G key, come in here, and if we grab it at this high resolution, it doesn't work quite so well as grabbing it as kind of at a lower resolution. We can kind of pull this whole thing out. Maybe pull it down a little bit, maybe round this off, and then as we go back up the levels, that high resolution detail that we've created is still there. Kind of pull this out a little bit so it follows along with that with that sculpted detail that we create. Okay, and again, we're using grab. We can go back to clay strips. We can kind of smooth this out a little bit and start to define some of the larger overall shapes that you want. You can kind of push it in. Maybe underneath here, we've got a little bit more of like the neck coming down into the body there. Maybe underneath, starting to come up. And again, on these, I'm gonna typically go in and sort of smooth it out after the fact. Let's say I want to have kind of a shoulder blade area, and kind of smooth this out. Just kind of give a good starting point for that. Maybe we want to have a little bit of idea of the kind of rolls coming across. So we can start to do that. Kind of smooth it back out. It just gives you kind of a starting point of those wrinkles that you'd want to get. Now on the feet, at this point, we want to come in and start to pull those out as well. So let me go back to grab and start to pull out those toes a little bit more. Now we've got more polygons to work with, so it's a lot easier to do. Okay, we can do the same thing sort of back here. I'll pull these out a little. You get something like that. And you can go back to your lower levels if you want to kind of flatten that out. Then we can come back to clay strips and start to add sort of a structure underneath those. So if you want to kind of build up, you know, those toes coming back, sort of build that back up, and do the same thing here. Kind of give a little bit more structure to it. Something like that. Now I also wanted to show you, in addition to clay and clay strips, you've also got flatten, which you can come in and flatten down areas. So if we had a spot up here on the head, let's say, and we wanted to flatten it, you can see where that's kind of flattening it. And right now it's based on the area plane. If you wanted to change it to the view plane, flatten it to the view plane, or you could specify a plane to flatten it to. You can see you can create sort of a plateau or a shelf if we're just flattening it down to the x-axis. Or you can just use an area plane, and then whatever you select underneath that, it's going to sort of flatten it along that direction. Instead of flatten, you could scrape. So you can kind of scrape off the top of these pieces. And this can be really cool when working with your clay. You kind of get the scraping effect there, kind of scraping off the top of it. So we've got flatten, scrape. You can also polish. So we could come in here and sort of smooths out and flattens areas. So I can come in here and sort of use it on the shoulder blade area. Those all kind of go together. We also have fill and deepen. So in this one, if we had areas that were, you know, we had creases and stuff that we've created, fill and deepen would either make those worse or more drastic rather, or they'd fill it in. You see how we're going over this, and it's not pulling out this side or this side, it's actually just filling in that opening. Okay, so if you have some openings that you need to sort of fill in the gaps of, you can use that. Okay. All right, so the next thing that I want to do is take a look at some of the other brushes. So blob, inflate, deflate, and then some brushes that are really going to help us get some detail on here. If we come in here, the crease brush will be a good one, and pinch as well. So let's take a look at those next.